Hey y'all, it's Lindsay, and today I want to show you a spiced cheesecake recipe. For the past couple of weeks, my friend Claire over at Cookie Crumb Fun and I have been sharing with y'all some Thanksgiving recipes to try to help you get your mind around eating Trim Healthy Mama on Thanksgiving Day. We were talking about appetizers, we talked about side dishes, and then we also talked about desserts. And for me, that's kind of the area of Thanksgiving that I'm most excited about. Like, I love the appetizers and I love the side dishes, but for sure it's the desserts that I'm gonna go back for time and time again. I struggled to think about what I wanted to make. Normally at Thanksgiving, my mom would always make a German chocolate pie, and before going Trim Healthy Mama, I wasn't really a fan of coconut, and I would always pick that off or ask her to make me my own little like ramekin of German chocolate pie without the coconut, and she was so obliging. But as my palate has sort of expanded over the past several years, I've gotten a lot more adventurous. And today I thought that I would try to create a spiced cheesecake recipe. I've not done this before, so this is going to be a super fun experiment, and I'm just kind of going off what feels right for this recipe. I'm not sure how this is going to turn out. It could be a total flop. After you watch me experiment with this spiced cheesecake recipe, I hope that you will go over to Claire's channel. I'll link her video right over here in the iCards so that you can see what kind of dessert she is going to be trying out for her Thanksgiving table this year. For this cheesecake, I want it to kind of have a gingerbread flavored crust, and then I want to add some of those gingerbread type flavors into the actual cheesecake batter. To bake this cheesecake, I'm going to be using my Instant Pot because we really like the way that cheesecakes turn out from the Instant Pot, and I think I might actually bake the crust first over here in my oven, and that way it kind of like at least gets a little bit crispy and doesn't wind up soggy. And I'm going to be using this is a 7-inch springform pan. I'm not going to be making a huge cheesecake this go around because this is an experiment. So let's get started with the crust.
For this recipe, we're going to use 1.5 cups of almond meal, about 1 tablespoon of powdered erythritol, and a shake or two of that powdered stevia. And then we're going to add in a 1/4 teaspoon of ginger, 1/8 teaspoon of cinnamon, and 1/8 teaspoon of cloves, and then about 1 teaspoon of molasses. And I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of butter here, and this is salted butter, so I'm not adding any salt to this crust. If you're using unsalted butter, add as much as you feel like is necessary. And then I'm going to crumble that up until it's a very good crumbly mixture. And using parchment paper, I'm going to line my springform pan so that my cheesecake will come out really nicely whenever it is cooled. I do not recommend skipping this step. It makes all the difference in the world for getting your cheesecake out easily. Now I'm going to press my mixture in, and I tried to get as much of that molasses off of the side, so you're going to notice a few spots of just pure molasses in the middle of this crust. I will be baking this crust at 350 degrees for 10 minutes.
Now that we have a crust, let's go ahead and make our cheesecake batter.
To 16 ounces of cream cheese, I'm going to add 6 tablespoons of plain low-fat yogurt, the Greek yogurt kind, or you could also use sour cream. Using my immersion blender, I'm going to make sure that this creams together really smoothly, and then I'm going to add in 2 teaspoons of vanilla and 1 teaspoon of molasses and mix that together. Then I'll be adding a 1/2 cup of powdered erythritol and a few shakes of that powdered stevia, and then 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/4 teaspoon of cloves, and a 1/2 teaspoon of ginger, and I'm going to blend that all together really, really well. Now that that's fully incorporated, very smooth, I'm gonna add in my eggs. And this step is very, very important. Make sure you just break up your eggs and don't fully mix them in with your immersion blender, and just sort of gently stir them into your cheesecake batter. Over mixed eggs in a cheesecake batter make for a very unpleasant texture. Then with that cooled crust, I'm going to pour in my cheesecake batter. And I put in about a cup of water to the base of my Instant Pot. And then I'm going to tap out as many of those air bubbles as possible so that I can get a very smooth, dense cheesecake. Secure a couple of paper towels to the top of your cheesecake pan with some tin foil to make sure that the moisture doesn't get onto the top of the cheesecake. Put it on your trivet and then lower it into the Instant Pot. I cooked this on regular pressure cook, so high pressure, for 30 minutes, and then I did a full natural pressure release and pulled it out. And as you can see, those paper towels really absorbed the moisture, and because my parchment was a little bit taller than the sides of my cheesecake pan, they kind of folded down onto my cheesecake to make an unpleasant edge. So I'm going to use some topping here. I'm going to take about a half cup of unsweetened, like 0% Greek yogurt, plain Greek yogurt, and about 2 tablespoons of that powdered erythritol. And I'm gonna make sort of like a topping. You want to smooth it, make this as smooth as possible so there are no lumps of that erythritol in this topping. And then you're just going to smooth it over top of your warm cheesecake, and something sort of magical happens here, and that topping melds into the top of your cheesecake, and it just gives it a really excellent crisp look. It makes it look like it came from a bakery, and it's just perfection, honestly. And I also really like using the offset spatula to get in there. That's definitely a tool that I appreciate having in my kitchen drawer. Next, we're going to let this cool completely on the counter and then let it set completely for 24 hours in the refrigerator.
So I'm going to show you me slicing up our cheesecake right over here, and here is my slice. I'm so excited to taste this. It has some molasses in it, but only having those 2 teaspoons in here means that it's really not going to have enough sugar in it to have any kind of glycemic impact, and the molasses really amps up the gingerbread flavor. Like, that's sort of a trademark of a gingerbread cookie or a gingerbread or any of those kind of things. So having that in here it really just completes the flavoring, I think. At least that's what I felt like whenever I was tasting the filling before it was actually baked. And I love it in the Instant Pot because it actually gets so dense and just so delicious looking. So let's taste. That was a quick bite. This tastes really good. It's a very subtle gingerbread flavor, not overpowering. You could definitely amp up the seasonings in here, but because it was an experiment, I didn't want to go overboard. And ooh, a little bit of nutmeg on top of this would be primo. Yes. I don't think I would go without the molasses, honestly. I also think that cutting this cheesecake into 8 slices is kind of excessive. I probably would cut it into 12, especially for the Thanksgiving Day table. You really don't want to like overload your plate with just one thing unless like that's the only Trim Healthy Mama option available to you. But anyway, this is really good. I'm gonna have to stop on camera for a minute. I have put exact measurements, exact instructions down in my description box, so I hope that you will check out this recipe. I hope you'll give it a try. I have not tried this out in my oven as far as actually baking the cheesecake filling in the crust, so that would be something you might want to play with if you're not going to be using a pressure cooker. I do know using a water bath and sealing up the outside of your springform pan with foil That is definitely advisable whenever you're baking cheesecakes in the oven so that it doesn't crack. But the thing is with that topping that I put on top of it, it can cover a multitude of imperfections. So if it does crack, you can just make a little bit more to fill in the crack and it'll be perfect, totally perfect. This cheesecake is also not excessively sweet. So if you really like sweet cheesecakes, bump up the sweetener to your liking, and also consider adding like a whipped cream topping to it if you'd like. Just kind of play with it the way you like. I had something else in mind that I've forgotten. Baking in the oven with cheesecake, I'm not really sure how long I would go for a 7-inch cheesecake. At least 45 minutes, possibly an hour, and then letting it cool down in the oven for probably 2 hours or so, and then pulling it out and letting it cool completely on the counter so that it would prevent the cracking, and then sticking it in the fridge for like 24 hours is definitely key for any cheesecake. So anyway, I'm gonna leave Claire's video in my description box, and I really hope that you will pop over to her channel, check out what she is going to be sharing. I'm very excited to see what she has chosen, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye.